Well, John, it is fantastic to have you behind the scenes with the Binging with Spling watch party. We've just seen The Cleaning Lady, and I was really impressed. I think a lot of people don't actually just register just how much is going on in this film. There's a lot of layering, and I just appreciated what you did with it, and how there's some echoes, and there's some interesting themes at play, and it just kind of all comes together so nicely. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's just jump straight in. Can you tell us a little bit about The Cleaning Lady and how it came about? I believe it's based on a short film.
No, it is not actually based on a short film. It was a feature script that was written, and the short film was actually made as a sort of proof of concept long after the feature was written, to try to gain some interest from investors. And a lot of times you put a package together. You don't just hand over your script. I mean, you can, but you also get your if you can, you shoot this proof of concept, which in this case we just did a small part of from the feature script, shot it, put it together, and that sort of was packaged together with shopping the script around. Sometimes that can help just to give people who are reading the script a sort of sense of the tone and the mood and the atmosphere that you're going for. I mean, oftentimes people can read scripts and just have a drastically different sort of, when you write a script, you know what you're doing, but then you hand it to, or you know what you're going for tonally, but then you hand it to somebody to read and they might get a totally different vibe. So that short film can be really helpful in those situations. So that's what that was.
That's really an excellent idea, actually, for any filmmakers watching this. Just because it's like you said, it's showing them, it's a taster. It's giving them a real good idea of exactly what your vision is entails. And so, yeah, I mean, I suppose my next question then is a little bit strange to be talking about extending the story into a feature film because the screenplay already existed. But
yeah, it was actually sort of reverse. It was actually, I guess I can answer that in a reverse way. It was how to turn it into a short, really is what it was. And you can literally just carve out a piece of your feature script and shoot it, but we still wanted the short to sort of stand on its own. So a lot of times what I would do is I grab a part of the feature that I want, but I might grab a small section from later in the script and then kind of connect them so that the short still has a sort of beginning, middle, and end kind of concept, so that it's a standalone thing. And so you can just sit there and watch it, and it feels like its own entity. So yeah, I guess I'm answering the backwards version of your question, but it was really sort of trying to figure out the right part of the feature to turn into a short. Also the tricky part is you're shooting a proof of concept because you're trying to raise the money to make your feature. So that being said, that means you don't really have the money to make your short because you don't have money yet. So it's hard to find that part in your script sometimes to shoot because you don't really have the money to put into it. So you're trying to find a part that doesn't cost too much, but still gives a sense of what the film is about. So I don't know, hopefully that answers your question in some fashion.
No, it does. And thank you. Yeah, it's all built around the cleaning lady. Obviously, the title character is Shelley, and she's such a tormented soul. The whole sort of unearthing of her backstory and her dark past, and how she kind of led to be the woman she is revealed. Did it ever, when you were writing the screenplay, did you kind of want it to be almost like a two-hander in a way originally, or was there ever a temptation to kind of go the Dexter route where you were kind of taking it from her perspective, but really getting the audience to sort of empathize with her and almost kind of have her as the main protagonist?
No, there was never any intention to make Shelley the protagonist, mainly because I had made a film prior to The Cleaning Lady where the protagonist sort of was the antagonist as well. And with The Cleaning Lady, I had set out to tell a story that the protagonist was not going to be the antagonist. It was going to be somebody that the audience can, in a conventional way, connect to, and that's the Alice character.
Yeah.
However, the Shelley character, it was my intention certainly was to develop her as much as possible. Because I think when you're making more of a drama horror, which I feel this is, psychological horror, I think it's a lot of fun to explore the depths of the antagonist, because it's not a slasher. It's not just somebody, popping out from behind the wall and attacking, in which case, if you got to learn about them, they suddenly aren't as scary anymore. If you got to spend time getting to understand why Jason's doing what he's doing in Friday the 13th, I think you kind of lose your fear factor. But in a film like this, it's a completely different approach. Shelley's somebody who just completely slides into your life, and it was just fun really building the mystery of what's going on with her, and not leaving her so mysterious, and actually diving into her backstory and learning about her, so that you answer questions but perhaps you ask a few more. And I just found that intriguing as a writer. But no, to answer your question, no, there was never any sense of coming at it completely from Shelley's perspective, in the Dexter fashion, as you say. I didn't think the audience would be able to really identify and connect. I thought it was fun to still keep her a little more at a distance and let Alice be the protagonist.
I suppose it'll also take a bit more of a satirical tone when that starts happening, like Dexter. So, I really thought that the casting was just, the casting calls were honored in this film. And it kind of, the impression I get from just having interviewed some of the other cast members is that you really do put a lot of trust and faith in the collaborative spirit when you're shooting. And was it all kind of through auditions, or did you have anyone that you wrote the part with in mind? How did it kind of roll out?
Mainly auditions. I mean, I was familiar with a lot of people's work, but for me, I really enjoy the audition process, because it gives you a sense, not only to see how they're going to play the character, but just to get a sense of their flexibility as an actor, and how far I can push them and how far I can pull them back when needed. And so it was sort of a whole package deal. It wasn't, I wasn't just looking at their previous work. I was also just trying to get to understand how it would be, with somebody like Rachel. There's logistical concerns too. Like, are you going to be able to sit in this makeup for 14 hours every day? It might sound exciting to play this role, but that's a real thing you got to think about, because that's not fun. And it's going to be very uncomfortable. And are you still able to, after 12 hours of just sitting there wanting to rip this stuff off your face, waiting in a back room for us to call you to set, are you going to be able to come out and perform? So it's things like that.
I think after 12 hours, she probably would have been ready to be Shelley.
Yeah, exactly. But and I don't know what it's like, to be honest. Someday I should get that stuff put on my face and sit there to really understand how aggravating it is, because I've heard nothing but bad things about when you have makeup just suction to your face, latex and such, for that long. But at the same time, that's the job. So it's been done by many others before, and it's part of playing that role. And Rachel did it. She did it. Thankfully, she hung through all the logistical frustrations, and I thought she performed very well.
She did, yeah. And, I was kind of also curious to know what you thought about the idea of having such a leading character that has those facial prosthetics with the burn scars. Was there ever any concern that the performance wouldn't translate to screen as well? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are just conversations I think you have with uh, your special effects person, and you can go too far with the makeup. I mean, obviously, things like eyes are the more you cover up the eyes, the harder it's going to be um, for the audience to really connect. Um, yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you look at something like, I don't know, The Elephant Man. David Lynch's The Elephant Man. Man, that's a hell of a
Yeah.
bunch of makeup, but yet he's still that performance is so strong that you do connect with them. So you want to no matter what the makeup's going to be, you just really want to have uh, belief in your actor. But that being said, I did have extensive conversations with Kelton, our special effects artist, about Shelley's makeup and um, keeping it so that she can still express herself physically in certain ways, and also not going too far with it too. It's not just about potentially hindering performance, but also just being believable makeup. If we had versions we had tried earlier that I thought were just too far, that were too Freddy Krueger, and it puts it more in a fantasy world instead of um, a real, like a legit. I mean, Shelley's backstory is pretty heavy and real and dark, and the result of her face is from that. And I wanted to just keep it at a very sort of reality sort of level in terms of how it looks. So I think Kelton did a great job with the effects, and I think her very sort of minimal performance, which I thought she did really well at times, the sort of held back, constrained sort of performance she had, still cut through really well with the makeup. So yeah, I think it all worked out.
Yeah, it did shine through. And I suppose audiences are going to just pick up on other cues when they are, restricted in a way. Like, for
Yeah,
instance, with the pandemic and everyone wearing masks, people have had to get
right,
much better at reading eyes for
right.
expression. And
Yeah,
I noticed with her performance also, she was modulating her voice. It kind of started quite soft in the beginning. I don't know if
yeah.
that was kind of what she was kind of injecting, or if that was like what you were pushing on her. But that kind of really helped with that feeling that she was like just kind of taking over the screen and the film as the sort of story played out.
Well, she was, getting the Shelley performance for Rachel. I remember it was sort of like tuning an instrument. In you just keep trying these different, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there it is. It was very much that, and she sort of found like a walk. She found a body movement. She found like a volume and tone to her voice that sometimes would go a little high, a little low, and then all of a sudden it would just be like, oh, there it is. And once we found that together, even prior to the shoot, I tried to stay pretty on that in terms of consistency. So if I felt that she perhaps would slip a little too high or low, I jump in and say, hey, I think we just went out of tune, and she would be like, right, and then she'd find it again, and it happens here and there. It's a tough level to stay consistent with, but I thought she did great.
She did. The apartment, I was quite curious. Well, I mean, it's more of a statement than a question, really. But I really love the way that you use that apartment, how you kind of gliding past walls, using both passages to kind of continue the shot. How there are these echoes with the bathtub, and the relaxation of the bath, then Shelley having a bath, and then the bathtub in a completely different scenario where Alice is kind of chained or tied up. So I love that, and also even loved the soundtrack, the way that the jazz came through, which was all like relaxed and whatever. and then later it returns, and suddenly it's a lot more sinister. So yeah, I'm just kind of like kind of gushing, I suppose, in a way. But
Well, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that. I mean, just in terms of the atmosphere and the tone was something that we all took very seriously and referenced a lot of films. And I think a lot of smaller films, a lot of indie films, I think sometimes production design and visual atmosphere kind of, that's like the first thing that goes out the door, unfortunately, because of budgets. But I don't think it should. I think the more you can fight to make everything feel like it's similar to looking at a painting, and you're able to sort of get lost in the visual atmosphere that's physically in front of you. I think the more of that, the better. And I think sometimes these, I see films where I feel like a lot of that stuff kind of disappeared because of budget, and you understand because it's a smaller budget movie, but it's less effective, and I think you want to try to fight for that stuff to stand out. So I do appreciate you appreciating it.
The Doll's House was also a nice touch, I thought, and obviously that kind of surreal flashback scenario that kind of helped the audience deal with the really difficult themes, surrounding sexuality and that kind of thing. Was that Doll's House, 2017, I'm guessing that it probably wasn't influenced by Hereditary, or you haven't seen Hereditary and then thought that would be amazing, because so in terms of influences as well, what other films, I know that you've mentioned Psycho and The Thing, but what horror films really kind of inspired you, or at least had some level of influence on how you made this film?
Yeah, definitely the Hitchcock films. Rosemary's Baby was a big one. That's one of my favorite horror films, and we reference that quite a bit. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know if, and I don't mean to speak for other filmmakers, but I'm sure some would agree that there comes a point where you're not conscious of what you're inspired by. You're not sitting there going, "Oh, this is just like The Exorcist" or whatever. The story you're telling takes on a life of its own, and you start to follow it, and perhaps you're referencing films maybe more subconsciously, and not so much the exact film, but maybe just a feeling you got when you watched the film that you're now trying to replicate, or just an aspect, a very small aspect from a film. So I find as I make movies more now in my career opposed to when I was younger, I'm less actually sitting down and referencing exact movies. I'm more just pulling out stuff from the memory bank in terms of vibe and feeling and mood. But certainly there's no doubt I've, grew up watching Hitchcock movies. I think a lot of that it was put into the Cleaning Lady, and like I said, Rosemary's Baby is a huge one. Certainly for the colors, some of the yellows. I really like the yellow in Rosemary's Baby. We used a similar approach here. So
yeah, I suppose you are going to always bring your frame of reference to any film you tackle, and some of that stuff that you've just loved is going to kind of seep through, and it's going to be your own, because you sort of, it's coming through your eyes, and it's your vision.
I wish I could say we were inspired by Hereditary, but like you said, I wasn't even aware of its existence at that point. However, I think that is a fantastic movie, and Midsommar as well. I think that filmmaker is one of a kind, and I'm very, very impressed with him. But yeah, no, I didn't even know. I remember when I saw it, and I saw the sort of dollhouse stuff. Well, not dollhouse, but the all those little models that they have in the film, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I love it. Yeah,
it's
very
that
cool
retrospective kind of 80s toys that kind of grown old and kind of ugly and twisted in a way.
Yeah.
And it starts with quite abruptly with the home appliance. Was that always going to be the scene to launch the film? I mean, it kind of it takes a while to ramp up to that level of gore again. And my take on it was that you were kind of saying, here's a litmus test in a way, like if you can handle this, you're going to be fine for the rest of the film, because this is quite intense, and you might not want to have a smoothie for a while after seeing this. But yeah, we'll take us through it.
That was put in later in the script writing process, as just, you know, just an opening scene to grab your attention. I was concerned about just starting on more of a dramatic note, and I wanted to bring something that kind of rattled you for a second, so that you kind of went, oh, okay, all right, this is a little messed up. But it wasn't, the idea behind it wasn't to see how well you could handle gore or anything like that. The idea really, it was very like, I just wanted to be very in your face and mysterious. Like, why is somebody doing this? And who is this being brought to? What is this? Like it's just the mystery behind it, how bizarre it was. It really wasn't as much of a gore idea as it was just a sort of something really twisted and weird and bizarre, to just kind of go, okay, there's something kind up going on here. That's probably going to come back later.
Yeah, because it was so impactful for a start, because you actually, I kind of think it did something quite amazing for the film, because it sort of throws you. It's like it's a bit of a hook from out of nowhere, and you kind of think to yourself, okay, is this like a precursor of what's to come, in terms of like, is every 3 minutes going to be something this intense, you know?
Right.
But it isn't, and it actually, it kind of it sort of throws you in that direction, but then actually turns into a much more artful horror film in a lot of ways. So I thought it worked in sort of keeping you off balance in a way as well, in terms of your expectations going into the film. So yeah.
Good.
And then, do you think there's an angle for a sequel to The Cleaning Lady?
No, I never thought that at all. I mean, you know, sure, I guess anything's possible. I certainly didn't write it with a sequel in mind. No, okay. I'm a big fan, and that's not to say I'm against a sequel. I think when you're sitting down to tell a story, you know, sequels are a strange entity in themselves. They often come from the financial success of the first one. So this is an independent film. I mean, this was more about, can we tell you an interesting story within our movie here, and that's it. I'm a fan of a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that end can, you know, reflects the whole story that you just were told. So I didn't think of it as let's set up a sequel. But if somebody wanted to, I'm sure we could figure it out.
Because
so, yeah.
I think it's in the strength of the setup that you've kind of got this really interesting character, and being a cleaning lady, or at least on that level of essential kind of service type stuff, she's kind of able to travel, and there's no like what's stopping her from finding a new target.
Yeah, exactly.
For the next room in her dollhouse, you know, she needs to fill up that dollhouse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's just another version of some weird kidnapping serial killer type that has her own set of you know, twisted things that drive her, and yeah, perhaps she's starting some sort of collection. I mean, absolutely. I think there's a lot you could do with it if you wanted to run in further with a sequel. No doubt. But no, I guess I just didn't really. I just wasn't. I wasn't thinking about that when I was writing it. I was really thinking about trying to just write one coherent story.
Mm.
But yeah, I've had, other people have brought it up for sure. And, what else could Shelley do? And I'm sure Shelley could do a whole hell of a lot. And I really enjoyed um, ending the film the way we ended it. I didn't want to end it on a high note. I didn't want to end it on, the protagonist wins. I really wanted to end it the way we did, and I thought that was more interesting.
Yeah, I thought there was. I mean, I just thought that there's a flicker of something there that could definitely turn into another production of, could even be a TV series. But
Yeah.
I actually was also interested in The Cleaning Lady because I watched a Chilean film called The Maid a couple of years back, and if you haven't seen it, it's a must see. And it's quite interesting because it's really a drama about a maid living in this family's home. And I think what people don't realize is just how much privacy they give up by having someone in their home that's employed by them, but also just the level of trust that's involved with someone that you don't actually know all that well. And this film is it's not even a horror, but it's such a prickly kind of drama that it actually almost shows you that there's so much room for a horror to actually be made out of this kind of story. And that's what really attracted me to The Cleaning Lady, because I just thought that voyeuristic angle, I mean, that idea of someone kind of peering from behind the corner, I mean, you played that up perfectly. So yeah, I thought that was great.
Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I will have to check that film out. Definitely. I think, yeah, you can get some really interesting horror aspects from quieter dramas than you would think. So I'm glad you dug the film.
Well, Jon, it's been fantastic talking to you and just getting some more insights into what it took to make The Cleaning Lady. And I just really appreciate the time that you've taken out to just give us a bit of a deep dive into that process. So thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.